Hey, what's going on, 200K fam? It's a 200K adjuster here coming at you. Hope you guys are doing great tonight. I just wanted to take time to create this video as a follow-up to my public adjuster video. If you guys watched that video and was following the comments, you see we had some really good commentary and discussions on the Facebook groups, and there seemed to be a need to create a follow-up video to talk about how to handle conflict when it arises. The previous video was basically on, how to deal with public adjusters in general on the inspection and how to set up the inspection where you don't have conflict as often, but it really didn't discuss how to handle conflict when it arises. Now, this video here is actually going to discuss how to handle conflict in general with either the insured or contractors or public adjusters or attorneys. So it's not just the public adjuster we're talking about here, but this is a great follow-up video to that, as there was a lot of discussion on just conflict. A lot of people sharing their conflicts that they have with public adjusters and how frustrating that can be, and we definitely need to address that in a video, and that's what I would like to do tonight. But by the way, before we go too much further, if you have not liked and subscribed to this channel, I post a lot of videos that I do not promote on the Facebook groups, if that's where you guys are following me from. I was originally, posting something every day, and I felt, that might be a little bit too much to do. I didn't want to be taking over those boards all the time, so now I'm trying to post, maybe once every 2 or 3 days. In this case here, it's going to be, 2 days from my last post, just because this is a follow-up to that discussion. But I drop videos just about every day. Earlier today, I dropped a video on how to use a Prusik knot with a Ridge Pro. So if you guys don't know how to harness up and use a Prusik knot, I went and showed you guys how to do that and how to really set up your harness in a safe manner that has 2 or 3 stop gates that will prevent you from falling. So if you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, if I can speak tonight, go ahead and do that. That would be great, and you guys can take advantage of those other videos that I'm not sharing with Facebook in general. But to get started with our conversation tonight about how to deal with conflict, the first thing that we need to do before we engage is understand if this is truly conflict or if this is just kicking tires. Okay, and it seemed like a lot of people, I could tell, get angry when contractors or insureds or public adjusters kick tires. They just want to see if something will get covered or not, right? And they consider that to be conflict. That's not conflict, okay? You guys go and kick tires all the time. All the time. We are always going out there trying to see what we can get. If you ever negotiated anything, what you're doing is you're kicking tires. You're trying to see what you can get for your money, okay? That's all this is. This is just negotiation. Negotiation is not conflict. It's just that, negotiation, okay? So if somebody is trying to get, cracked caulk on the staircase covered and trying to say it could have been wind related, of course we know that's not wind related. Of course we know that's settlement, right? But that's not conflict. They kind of know it too. They're just trying to see if you'll give it to them, right? I'll give you an example. I was on the roof the other day with a contractor, and he was pointing out these indentations on the shingles and was trying to call it hail. And it was a simple conversation. He wasn't being confrontational about it. He was just saying, hey, wouldn't you just consider this to be hail? And I just simply said, no, and I'll just explain why. And then I went and showed him, you see how you can see the fiberglass in here? Hail typically doesn't get you to the fiberglass. And you see how small this is? This is typically the evidence of a blister, not hail. There's no granulars indented into this. The size and shape is very small. It's more of a bald spot that got to the fiberglass underneath the shingle. So more than likely, this is not hail. This is not consistent with what hail damage would look like. This is more like blistering. But you know what? I did find a hail hit. Let me show you what I'm looking for. And then I went and I showed him what I was looking for when we identify hail. Guess what? We didn't have that conversation again for the rest of the inspection. It wasn't confrontational. He wasn't trying to rape us over the policy and just get everything covered. He was just trying to see what we interpret as hail, right? And a simple answer with an explanation solved it. That was it. Same thing on estimates. If you got a PA who is creating a $200,000 estimate and the original estimate is $10,000, is that frustrating? Yes. 99% of the time, they know it's bogus. They're just trying to see what you'll cover. They're throwing mud at the wall, seeing if it sticks. That's not conflict. Okay? You guys need to quit thinking of that as conflict. Can it be frustrating because now you have to, do some extra steps and extra paperwork? Yes, it's frustrating. I'm not going to deny that. It's very frustrating. But it's not conflict. And you guys need to quit trying to treat it as conflict. A lot of times, just a simple no and a basic explanation of why is all it takes, and it's handled, and you're done and you're moving on. Okay, so you need to identify what is true conflict versus what is just tire kicking. And everybody kicks tires, even you, so don't get mad at them. All right, now number 2, once you identify what kind of conflict it is, if it is indeed a confrontational conversation you're about to have, you can tell just by the demeanor, the tone of voice, just the directness of the conversation. Guess what? There's some things that we still need to do in order to maintain an air of professionality or professionalism. There we go, professionalism, right? We always got to maintain professionalism, no matter what, no matter how angry somebody gets. So one way we can do that is just recognize that anger, almost 100% of the time, is a secondary emotion. Anger is a secondary emotion. This is also true with family members, kids, spouses. You just need to remember that. Anger is almost always secondary. In the case of adjusting, anger could be the reflection of fear. An insured may be afraid that everything they heard about insurance companies is true and they're just trying not to pay what is due to the insured and that they're getting screwed or scammed, right? And so that fear turns into anger because they're trying not to get screwed. Okay, that's number 1. The other thing is frustration could be the cause of anger, right? There's a great quote that says your level of expectation minus the level of reality minus your expectations equals the total of your frustration. So if you have an expectation that's really high and reality is really low, that difference is how frustrated you're going to be. Guess what? A lot of insureds, a lot of contractors, and even PAs are frustrated because they assume something will be covered that's not. And then they get angry. But anger wasn't the primary emotion. It was frustration because they had a wrong assumption. Okay? So the first thing could be fear. The second thing is frustration. You also can have anxiety be the cause of anger, right? So the insured finds something is not covered and now they have to find a way to pay for it and they don't have the money to do so. That's fear or that's anxiety, right? And that kind of can lead to, anger, an outbreak of anger. And so anger is not the primary emotion, it's the secondary emotion. And if you can understand that, then what you'll find out is that the anger really isn't directed at you. Now it's directed at you in a physical sense because you're the person that's bringing the bad news, but the truth of the matter is they're more angry at the situation than they are of you. You're just the face of it, right? And so, they got to get their frustration out, their fear out. They have to just exclaim it to somebody and tag you're it, because you're the face of that disappointing news, okay? But it's not really directed at you. It's really, directed at either the fear or the anxiety or, the frustration that's involved with the situation. And so even if they're angry at you, don't take it personally. You cannot take it personally. You have to maintain an air of professionalism, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about that in a minute. So just remember that anger is secondary. Now, I'm going to grab my notes here, keep on track. So anger is secondary. It's not about you. Okay, so how can we handle these conflicts? Okay, there's a great little tip that I learned when I was younger. It's called feel, felt, found. Okay, how do we turn a very emotional, angry conversation into something that's controllable and manageable? Feel, felt, found. Okay, I want you guys to remember this. It's just simply this. You're just going to say, Mr. Insured, Mr. NPA, Mr. Contractor, I understand how you feel. That's one. That's the feel. I understand how you feel. And you have to be empathetic here. The best way to be empathetic is to practice empathy. Okay? How would you feel if you were in that position? And that's where the felt comes from. Hey, Mr. Insured, I understand how you feel. I would probably have felt the same way in your position. Right? What you're saying is, you're not wrong to feel this way. I might have felt the same way. Right? Then you're going to say what I found. Right? So let's take the example of an insured saying, you know what, I'm gonna call an attorney. I'm gonna sue you guys because you're not giving me the coverage I want. Right? Or a PA saying, we're going to take this to appraisal. So what you need to say is, well, I understand how you feel. I probably would have felt the same way in your position. What I found is that it's never best to make a decision when upset. And if you will just take some time to actually review the information that the report that I've created, maybe it'll help you in this decision. You may still end up going after an attorney. You still may go after an appraisal. But I would recommend is just taking a step back, take a look at my report, and then decide from there what the next step should be. Feel, felt, found, right? Or the insured gets upset. Hey, why didn't you replace my roof? Why are you only repairing my roof? Well, I understand how you feel, Mr. Insured. I probably would have felt the same way in your position. But one thing I found is, if a roof is doing its job, it's best to leave it alone as best as possible instead of trying to repair it or instead of trying to replace it, because it's doing its job. It's working, right? So you got to say, feel, felt, found. I understand how you feel. I might have felt the same way. But you know what? This is what I found, okay? Now, you're going to have to practice that. So you're going to have to come up with the top 5 or 6 points of conflict that you guys have. And you're going to have to kind of work on that, especially the found part. What did you really find? It is true. If a roof is doing its job, why in the world would you try to replace the whole thing and take a chance at a new roof? New roofs fail all the time. This roof is doing its job, right? Why in the world would you just automatically assume that you need to go to an appraiser when you haven't even fully read a report that I'm sending you? So that's the one thing that you guys can do to see if you can get a conversation, back under control. Empathy. Understand how you feel. Now you're going to say, I would have felt the same way, right? You're not going to say that. You're going to say, I may have felt the same way if I was in your shoes. I may have. Maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't, right? We don't know, but we might have. If we had the same expectations, we might have. But this is what I found, right? So feel, felt, found. Now, let's say that the conversation isn't under control, in that the conversation escalates, right? So now it's getting to an escalation. what you're going to do here is you're just going to go to feel final, right? It's feel final. This is what you're going to say. Well, before we go into that, we're just going to reiterate one thing, and that's what I should have said at the beginning. You have to know that you yourself are not to blame for bad news. The bad news comes from what the policy says versus what the insured or the PA or the contractor expects. That's the bad news. That's the blame for the bad news. You're not to blame for the bad news, okay? I'll give you a great example. In Louisiana, you have hurricane deductibles, right? And some of these hurricane deductibles are astronomical. And there was one where it was like $30,000 was this deductible, and this insured was really upset. It's like, how in the world can you guys charge me $30,000? And we had this, he was very upset. And the thing that I just held in the back of my mind. Now, I didn't say this, but the thing that I had in the back of my mind is, you know what? I am not the person who sat down with this insured and made him sign the paperwork. I'm not the person. That was the agent. If the agent didn't explain this to him, I'm not at fault for this guy's expectations, okay? And so it was just something mental. So his anger at me, he was angry at me because I was the face of the bad news, but I wasn't responsible for the bad news, okay? He signed a policy, and I can't say that, I don't know if the agent went over it with him or not, but he signed a policy, and the policy stated something from the beginning that he obviously didn't know or just conveniently forgot, right? I am not responsible for that. I wasn't the agent that signed him up with the policy. I wasn't, there with the insured who made him sign that policy. It wasn't my fault that this guy was disappointed in his deductible, okay? So that's the thing you got to realize if this is going to work. You are not at fault for giving bad news. The fault is what's in the policy versus what the insured expects, okay? So you need to keep that in mind. Now, to go back, I think we were at feel and final. Yes, so with that in mind, if the conversation, after we do our feel, felt, found, right, I understand how you feel. I may have felt the same way if I was in your position. Let me tell you what I found, okay? If that doesn't work and the conversation still is elevated, what you just need to do is just feel final. And this is how you're going to just do it. Mr. Insured, Mr. PA, Mr. Contractor, whatever. I really do understand how you feel. The final thing I can say about this is that according to the policy, this is what I'm allowed to extend coverage for. That's it, right? You're just going to put it to bed right there. You're going to be empathetic again. Hey, I understand how you feel. But this time you're not going to say, I might have felt the same way, right? You just, hey, I understand how you feel. The final thing I can say. Did you hear that? What does that tell them? This conversation's over. But it's very professional. The final thing I can say, this conversation's over. There's nothing else that can be discussed here. The final thing I can say is that I can only extend coverage based on the policy. The end. Okay? That's how you're going to have to handle confrontation. After that point, what are they going to tell you? What are they going to tell you? I'm just going to quit State Farm. Okay? What are you going to say? I'm not there to, or I'm going to quit whatever insurance carrier. I'm actually working State Farm now. That's why they're on the top of my head. But whatever insurance carrier, whether it's Progressive or some of these smaller firms, it's whatever carrier you're working for. It's, hey, I'm going to quit. I'm going to sue. I'm going to do whatever. You already said the final thing. It's within your right to do whatever you feel is right. I can only extend coverage based on your policy. And then that's the end of the conversation. There's nothing else that can be said at that point. Okay? So those are some tips and tricks on how to handle conflict. If you guys want to share how you guys handle conflict, feel free to leave a comment below. If this has helped you guys, please like the video here in YouTube, not just in Facebook. the likes in YouTube actually help the algorithm out. So you may have come over from Facebook, but definitely like and comment on the YouTube video itself and share any thoughts that you guys have. With that, I hope you guys have a great night, and I will talk to y'all later.